The sky burned with a pale orange glow, dust rising in the wind like whispers of an ancient past. Across the wasteland, broken machines and shattered armor lay half buried under the sand. Eric moved slowly, his boots sinking into the dry ground, each step crunching with the sound of forgotten battles. He was not here for treasure or gold. He was searching for something that should not exist. Legend spoke of a weapon buried where the first fallen warrior had made his last stand. They said the blade still carried the strength of its master, and that whoever claimed it would inherit both his glory and his enemies. Most believed it was only a tale told to scare children. But Eric had seen enough strange things in this war to know that some legends were true. The wind pushed against him, carrying the scent of rust and ash. His eyes scanned the jagged remains of what once might have been a fortress. Burned-out walls stood like teeth in the ground, and shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long across the sand. In the center of the ruin, he saw something unusual, a deep hole, freshly disturbed, as if the earth itself had tried to hide something. He slid into the pit, his hands brushing away the sand. The more he dug, the more his heart began to pound. His fingers struck metal. A golden glint shone beneath the dust. It was not the dull shine of modern steel, but the deep, warm glow of something older, something that seemed alive. He pulled harder, the ground giving way until the shape of a sword emerged before him. The blade was long, its surface smooth, yet etched with strange, flowing lines of fire-like light. As he lifted it, the glow spread, revealing words carved into the metal. They pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Eric read the inscription aloud without meaning to, his voice steady, yet strangely heavy. All enemies of the fallen warrior are now your enemies. The air around him seemed to change, as if the very desert was listening. The moment the last word left his lips, a low sound rolled across the ground. It was not thunder, but something deeper, a vibration in his bones. In the distance, black shapes began to rise over the horizon. They moved like shadows given form, tall and thin, with movements too precise to be human. He could not yet see their faces, but he could feel their attention turning toward him. Eric tightened his grip on the sword. It felt heavier now, not from its weight but from the meaning behind it. He understood in that moment that this was no simple weapon. By holding it, he had taken on a war older than his own. And whatever was coming over that horizon was coming. For him, the black shapes on the horizon moved with unnatural speed. Eric knew they were not soldiers from any army he had fought before. Their movements were too smooth, too sharp, like blades sliding through air. He could not tell if they were walking or gliding, but every step seemed to bring them closer without sound. The sword in his hand felt warmer, its glow pulsing faster as if it recognized the threat. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his mind. The air around him had grown heavy, almost as if it was pressing against his chest. It reminded him of the moments before a sandstorm, when the sky seemed to hold its breath. But this was not a storm. This was something alive. He tightened his grip on the hilt, feeling the rough texture of the ancient leather wrap. It was solid, unyielding, as if made for his hand alone. The pit he had climbed into now felt like a trap. Sand shifted under his feet, sliding down in small streams, as if the ground itself wanted him to stay buried with the sword. Eric forced himself to climb up, each step heavier than the last. When he finally reached the top, he saw the shapes more clearly. They were tall, armored in black plates that caught no light, and their heads were featureless except for a single red slit where eyes should be. A memory came to him, a story told by an old soldier during a night watch. He had spoken of the fallen warrior's enemies, how they were not men but things built for war, machines that had once been alive. They were said to hunt forever, never stopping, never forgetting a face marked by the blade. At the time, Eric had laughed, thinking it was just campfire fear meant to keep rookies alert. Now he was staring at them, and they were real. The nearest one stopped and tilted its head. The movement was slow and deliberate, like a predator studying prey. Then, without warning, it raised a weapon that looked like a long spear of black glass. The red slit on its head flared brighter. Eric's instincts screamed at him to move. He dove to the side just as the ground where he had stood erupted in a burst of molten sand. Heat washed over him, searing his exposed skin. The air filled with a sharp metallic scent. Eric rolled to his feet, bringing the sword up in a guard position. The golden glow along its edge grew brighter, and for a moment, he thought he heard a faint hum coming from it. It was not the sound of steel but something deeper, like a voice just beyond hearing. The enemy advanced again, its steps silent despite its size. Eric swung the sword in a wide arc, the blade slicing through the air with surprising speed. When it met the enemy's spear, there was no ringing clash of metal. Instead, there was a flash of light and a sound like stone breaking. The black spear split cleanly in two, and the creature staggered back. A dark, viscous fluid spilled from the break, hissing when it touched the sand. Eric realized this was no ordinary metal. It was alive in some way. The other shapes moved faster now, spreading out to surround him. Eric's heart pounded as he searched for an escape. The ruins behind him offered cover, but he knew they would trap him if he ran too deep inside. The open desert ahead was dangerous, but at least he could move freely. The choice weighed on him for only a second before he decided. He gripped the sword with both hands and ran toward the space between two of the advancing enemies. One of them lunged, its arm transforming into a blade mid-strike. Eric ducked low, the tip passing inches above his head, and drove his own blade upward. The golden edge cut through armor and whatever lay beneath it. The creature fell, its body dissolving into black ash that scattered in the wind. The sight shocked him, but there was no time to think. Another enemy was already swinging a heavy, axe-like weapon toward his back. Eric twisted, bringing the sword up just in time to block. The impact shook his arms, but the golden blade held firm. Sparks of light burst from the clash, momentarily blinding his opponent. Eric stepped forward, pushing the creature back, and struck again. This time, the cut went clean through its torso. The upper half collapsed in a cloud of ash before hitting the ground. Two were down, but more were closing in, their red slits glowing brighter, their movements faster, as if the sword's glow had enraged them. The remaining enemies spread out in a tight circle, moving with perfect coordination. Their red slits glowed like burning lines across the desert heat. Eric could hear nothing from them. No footsteps, no breathing, only the faint hum of their weapons charging. The silence felt worse than battle cries, like the quiet before a killing blow. He shifted his stance, the golden sword steady in his hands. Its glow now a fierce beam in the dusty air. The enemy directly ahead moved first, lunging with speed that blurred its form. Eric reacted on instinct, stepping aside and swinging the blade in a sharp arc. The golden edge sliced through its arm, severing the weapon it carried. The cut was clean, but instead of blood, a dark mist poured out, curling upward before fading. The creature stumbled back, its movements jerky, as if the strike had broken something deep inside it. Eric did not wait for it to recover. He advanced, pressing the attack, his boots kicking up bursts of sand. The blade hummed louder with each swing, and every strike seemed to grow heavier, as though the sword itself was feeding on the fight. Another enemy stepped in, its long limbs striking from the side. Eric spun, meeting the attack mid-swing. The clash sent a shock through his arms, but the black weapon split apart under the golden light. Two more came at once, their forms weaving around each other in perfect rhythm. Eric dropped low, letting their blades cut through the air above him, then surged forward between them. The sword moved in a smooth, powerful arc, cutting through both at once. They crumbled into ash before they even hit the ground. The heat of the battle made the air shimmer, and his breath came heavy, but his grip on the hilt never loosened. He was outnumbered, but they were no longer endless. Each strike reduced their numbers, yet each survivor seemed to move faster than before. Eric felt the weight of their focus on him, not just as an enemy, but as the bearer of the sword. They did not seem to care about his life, only the weapon in his hands. The truth hit him hard. This was not his fight alone. He had taken the place of the fallen warrior, and that meant the war itself had found him. The last three enemies advanced together, their formation tight. Their movements were so precise they seemed like one being split into three bodies. The ground trembled slightly as they stepped forward. Eric steadied himself, drawing in a deep breath. His arms ached from the constant strikes, but the sword felt almost weightless now, as if ready for one final push. The glow along the blade sharpened into a bright line, blinding in the sunlight. The first to reach him swung downward, aiming for his head. Eric raised the sword high, catching the blow, then twisted sharply. The enemy's blade glanced off, leaving it open for a horizontal slash. The golden edge tore through its torso, and the body burst apart into drifting black ash. The second enemy struck before the ash even hit the ground, its weapon spinning in a blur. Eric stepped inside the swing, driving the point of his sword through its chest. The light flared so bright it burned a circle into the air before fading. Only one remained. It moved slower than the others, almost deliberately. Eric realized it was not hesitation, it was studying him. Its red slit narrowed slightly, and the ground under its feet cracked as it stepped forward. When it attacked, the strike was faster than any before. Eric barely managed to bring his sword up in time. The impact rattled his bones, and for a moment, they stood locked together, golden light against black steel. The pressure built, each trying to overpower the other. Then, with a sudden surge of strength, Eric pushed forward. The golden blade slid through the enemy's weapon and deep into its chest. There was no sound, only a burst of bright light as the figure dissolved into ash. The desert fell silent again, the wind returning as if nothing had happened. Eric stood alone among drifting black dust, his breathing steady but his mind racing. He looked down at the sword in his hands. Its glow dimmed slightly, as though the battle had satisfied it for now. But Eric knew it was not over. The words on the blade seemed brighter than before, almost daring him to read them again. He did not need to. He already understood the truth. The enemies he had just faced were only the first to come. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, more would be waiting. Asterisk, the desert stretched endlessly before Eric, its surface shimmering in the heat. The ruins behind him were silent now, only broken stones and scattered ash remaining as signs of the battle. His body ached from the fight, but his grip on the sword was firm. He could still feel the hum within the blade, faint yet alive, like the heartbeat of a predator waiting for its next hunt. He began walking toward the distant ridge, scanning the horizon. The sun was high and harsh, baking the ground under his feet. Every step felt heavier than the last, but he forced himself to keep moving. He knew standing still was dangerous. The enemies he had faced would not be the last. Somewhere there, masters would have felt their destruction, and they would send more. As he moved, he noticed faint shapes carved into the rocks along the path. They were symbols he did not recognize, yet something about them felt connected to the sword. The lines were sharp, worn only slightly by time, and they glowed faintly when the blade came near. Eric slowed his pace, letting the sword pass over each carving. The glow in the symbols brightened, and a strange warmth spread through the hilt. Into his hands, a sudden sound broke the stillness, the crunch of loose stones behind him. Eric turned sharply, the sword raised. A figure stood at the edge of the ruins, watching him. It was not one of the black-armored enemies. This one was different. Tall and lean, cloaked in deep brown fabric, its face hidden by a mask of bone. The figure did not move closer, but the air around it felt tense, charged with something unspoken. Put the blade down. The stranger's voice was deep, almost like the rumble of distant thunder. Eric said nothing, keeping the weapon steady. The stranger tilted its head slightly, as though studying him. "You do not understand what you carry," it said. "That sword does not only defend, it calls. Every time you use it, they will come, and they will not stop." Eric's jaw tightened, but he did not lower the weapon. The figure took a slow step forward. "You think the enemies you fought are the worst of it? You are wrong. They are scouts, nothing more. The true hunters have not yet risen. And when they do, there will be no place to hide." Its voice carried no fear, only certainty. Eric felt a chill despite the burning sun. He could not tell if the stranger was warning him or threatening him. "Then help me stop them," Eric replied, his tone firm. The stranger's mask tilted again, almost like a smile hidden behind bone. "Stopping them is not possible," it said. "Surviving them is." With that, it turned away, walking toward the deeper shadows of the ruined stones. Eric hesitated, torn between following and continuing toward the ridge. In the end, the choice was made for him. The ground trembled beneath his feet. A low, distant roar rolled across the desert, too deep to be from wind or thunder. The stranger paused mid-step but did not turn back. "They come," it said. Then it vanished into the ruins, leaving Eric alone once more. He turned toward the horizon and saw dark shapes rising again, but these were different from before. Larger, faster, their outlines seemed to shift in the heat, like shadows wearing armor made of fire. Eric tightened his grip on the sword, the golden glow flaring to life as if sensing the new threat. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was steady. He had survived once. He would survive again. The wind picked up, carrying a faint metallic taste to the air. The sun dimmed slightly, as though something massive had stepped between it and the earth. The first of the new enemies broke into a sprint, the sand exploding under its feet. There was no more time to think. Eric braced himself, planting his boots firmly in the sand. The blade hummed louder than ever before, its light cutting through the swirling dust. The dark figure charged, and Eric stepped forward to meet it. The clash would be harder than anything he had faced yet, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The sword had chosen him, and there was no turning back. The first of the new enemies crashed into him with the force of a falling boulder. Eric twisted his body, letting the golden blade absorb the impact. The strike rang through his arms, but he held his ground. The creature's armor was darker than the last one's, its surface rippling like molten metal. The red light in its head burned brighter, almost white at the edges, and its claws dug furrows into the sand. Eric stepped into the attack, swinging the sword in a rising arc. The blade met the enemy's chest, and the golden light burst outward like fire breaking through stone. The impact drove the creature back, leaving a deep smoking cut through its armor. It staggered but did not fall. Instead, it let out a piercing sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The sound was not just noise, it was a signal. In the distance, more shapes appeared, moving faster than any soldier could run. They bounded across the sand in great leaps, their bodies twisting unnaturally in midair. The ground shook as they landed, throwing up waves of dust with each stride. Eric counted at least 8 of them, and his muscles tightened. He had faced fewer before, but these were built for more than speed. Every movement they made radiated strength. The closest one lunged with its claws outstretched. Eric shifted his weight, letting the blow pass close, then cut low across its legs. The sword sliced clean through, and the creature fell in a spray of black ash. He did not wait to see it dissolve fully. Another was already closing in from his left, swinging a heavy blade formed from its own arm. Eric blocked, sparks of golden light and shadow bursting in the air. The force drove him back a step, but he pivoted and thrust forward. The point of the sword pierced through the enemy's head. and the white-hot light of the blade burned through its core. The body collapsed, its armor caving inward before breaking apart. The heat radiating from the sword was stronger now, and Eric could feel it in his bones. Each kill seemed to awaken something deeper inside the weapon. 3 enemies came together. From the front, their bodies moving in perfect rhythm. Eric breathed in slowly, then charged to meet them. The first swung high, and he ducked under, cutting across its midsection. The second came in from the side, but he stepped inside its reach, and drove the sword into its chest. The third tried to strike while he was locked in the kill, but Eric twisted, pulling the blade free in a single motion that carried through into a clean slice across its neck. They fell in seconds, dissolving into clouds of black dust. The air was thick with the drifting remains, stinging his eyes and coating his skin. He wiped his face with the back of his arm and scanned the field. 3 more were left, each moving slower now, their formation breaking. They circled him at a distance, their heads tilting in perfect unison, as though reassessing the fight. The sword's glow pulsed, steady and certain. One broke away from the circle and leapt high into the air. Its shadow passed over him, and Eric waited until the last instant before striking upward. The blade cut through its chest, splitting it cleanly. The halves fell apart before hitting the ground, already fading into ash. The remaining 2 charged together, but he met them head-on. The clash was fierce golden light against burning black steel, the sand exploding around their feet with a burst of strength. Eric drove one enemy's weapon aside and sliced through its side. It fell without a sound, leaving the last one standing. This one hesitated, its red light dimming slightly. Eric raised the sword, the glow spilling across the battlefield. The creature tilted its head, then turned and sprinted toward the horizon. He could have chased it, but something inside told him not to. The fight was over, for now. The desert was silent again, the heat pressing down on him like a weight. Eric's breathing slowed, and the hum of the sword faded to a low thrum. He looked at the horizon, knowing this peace would not last. The words on the blade still burned in his mind, and with them came a single truth. Every enemy of the fallen warrior was now his enemy, and they would keep coming. Eric stood among the fading dust, the weight of the sword heavy in his hands. His chest rose and fell slowly, the heat of battle still pulsing in his veins. The horizon shimmered under the burning sun, but nothing moved there now. The enemy that had fled was gone, leaving him alone with the silence and the lingering hum of the blade. He turned toward the ridge, deciding to keep moving before the next attack found him. The ground here was uneven, scattered with old bones and shattered weapons half buried in the sand. Each step crunched over the remains of long-forgotten battles. The sun was merciless overhead, drawing lines of sweat down his face, but his grip on the sword never loosened. The thought of being caught unprepared made his pace quicken. As he climbed higher, the land began to change. The sand gave way to cracked stone, and strange pillars rose from the ground like the roots of a giant tree turned to rock. Carvings ran along their surfaces, deep grooves filled with an iridescent dust that seemed to shift color in the light. The patterns twisted in ways that made his eyes ache, yet he felt drawn toward them. The sword's glow responded, casting a warm reflection across the markings. Halfway up the ridge, a shadow moved to his left. Eric stopped, shifting his stance. From between 2 stone pillars, a figure emerged. This one was not armored like the enemies he had fought. It was tall and thin, wearing robes made of layered cloth that rippled in the hot wind. Its skin was pale silver, and its eyes glowed with a faint blue light. The figure raised an empty hand in greeting, though its gaze never left the sword. "You carry the oath blade," the figure said, its voice calm but edged with something harder. "That weapon has chosen you, and now you are bound to its war." Eric kept his silence, waiting. The figure stepped closer, its movements deliberate. "If you wish to live, you must understand the cost. The enemies you have faced are only the beginning. The oath blade was forged to finish a war that has never ended. The words settled in the air like the weight of stone. Eric finally spoke. Then tell me how to end it. The figure's expression did not change. To end it, you must go where the fallen warrior fell. The place is cursed, locked behind the seal of the ancients. The enemies will guard it with everything they have. And when you reach it, you must decide whether to use the blade's true power. The way it said those words made Eric's grip tighten on the hilt. The figure looked toward the horizon, where faint dark specks were already rising in the heat. They are coming again, it said. You cannot fight them forever in the open. Follow the path through the ridge. It will take you to the Canyon of Echoes. From there, the road to the fallen warrior's tomb begins. Without another word, the figure stepped back into the shadows between the pillars and was gone. Eric turned toward the path, his steps quickening. The ridge narrowed into a trail barely wide enough for one person. Below, the ground fell away into a deep chasm where wind howled through unseen gaps in the stone. The air was cooler here, but the echoes of the wind carried strange tones, like whispers that followed his every step. The sword's hum matched the rhythm. As if recognizing the place, the trail curved around a towering wall of rock, and suddenly the view opened. Before him stretched a canyon of jagged cliffs, their walls lined with more of this strange glowing carvings. In the distance, dark openings marked the mouths of tunnels carved into the stone. The light shifted here, as if the sun was dimmer, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. It was both beautiful and dangerous, a place where every step could be watched. Eric tightened his grip on the sword and stepped forward. Somewhere beyond these cliffs lay the truth about the fallen warrior, and perhaps the means to stop the endless pursuit. But he also knew that every step brought him closer to more battles, and the enemies would not stop until one side was destroyed. The oath blade pulsed once in his hand, as if agreeing with his thoughts, and he kept moving deeper into the canyon. The canyon walls rose high on both sides, blocking most of the wind. Eric moved quietly, each step echoing against the stone. The air here was cooler, but it carried a dry metallic scent that made his skin prickle. Above, faint streaks of light filtered through cracks in the cliffs, painting shifting patterns across the ground. The sword's glow seemed stronger in this shadowed place, as though it was guiding him forward. He followed the winding path deeper until the sound of rushing water reached his ears. It grew louder with every step until he came to a narrow stream cutting across the canyon floor. The water was clear but strangely cold to the touch. It flowed from a small crack in the cliff, vanishing into another on the opposite side. Beside the stream stood a weathered stone marker, covered in the same glowing carvings he had seen before. As he drew closer, the carvings flared brighter. The sword's hum deepened, vibrating through his arm. The light from the blade touched the stone, and the symbols shifted, forming shapes that almost looked like a map. Eric studied it, tracing the lines with his eyes. The path it showed wound through the canyon, ending at a place marked with a sharp, jagged symbol. He had no doubt this was the location of the fallen warrior's tomb. A sudden sound made him turn. From the shadows of the cliff, figures emerged, moving with slow precision. These were not the black-armored hunters he had fought before. Their armor was white, streaked with deep red markings, and their weapons gleamed like polished bone. Their movements were smoother, more controlled, and each step felt deliberate. There was no rush in their approach. They knew he had nowhere to run. Eric held the sword ready, the golden glow casting sharp reflections on their armor. The nearest one raised a long, curved blade, holding it in both hands. Its stance was different from the others he had fought, more like a warrior trained in discipline than a machine built for killing. The others spread out, forming a half circle around him. Their eyes, or the slits that served as eyes, glowed faintly blue instead of red. The one in front spoke, its voice low and even. "Bearer of the Oath Blade, you stand in the path of the final guardians. Turn back. The tomb is not for you." Eric did not lower his weapon. "If you want me to turn back, you will have to stop me," he replied. There was no anger in his voice, only certainty. The guardian tilted its head slightly, then stepped forward. The clash was sudden and fierce. The guardian's blade met the oath blade with a ringing sound, sparks of gold and white bursting in the air. Eric pushed forward, but the guardian's strength was steady, unyielding. They exchanged blows, each strike meeting the other with perfect timing. The other guardians did not move to join, watching in complete stillness as the duel unfolded. It was a test, and both of them knew it. Eric feinted left, then struck from the right. The golden edge caught the guardian's shoulder, slicing deep into the white armor. The guardian staggered but did not fall. Its blade swept low, forcing Eric to leap back. The ground beneath them was marked with deep cuts where their weapons had struck. The hum of the sword grew louder, and the guardian's blue light flared brighter in answer. Finally, with a sudden burst of speed, Eric drove the sword forward in a powerful thrust. The golden blade pierced through the guardian's chest, the light burning through the armor. The guardian dropped to one knee, then slowly lowered its weapon. "You may pass," it said, before its body dissolved into a fine white dust that drifted away in the wind. The others stepped aside, leaving the path open. Eric walked past them without a word. None of the remaining guardians moved to stop him. Their eyes followed him until he was beyond their reach, then they turned back into the shadows of the canyon. The path ahead narrowed again, leading into darkness. Somewhere beyond that darkness lay the tomb, and with it, the answer to the war. The oath blade had bound him to *. The path into the darkness narrowed until Eric had to turn his shoulders to pass. The air grew cooler, and the sound of the outside world faded. The stone walls were smooth to the touch, carved long ago by skilled hands. The faint glow from the oath blade lit his way, casting golden light across the tunnel. Each step took him deeper into the heart of the ridge, and the weight of the silence pressed against his mind. After a long walk, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling rose high above, its surface painted with scenes of war. Warriors in shining armor clashed with dark figures under a blood-red sky. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, and on it rested a stone coffin sealed with bands of gold. Carvings of the same strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly in the blade's light. Eric approached slowly, the hum of the sword growing stronger with each step. The air here was still, yet charged with a strange energy that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. As he reached the coffin, the bands of gold trembled, then slid apart on their own. The lid lifted slightly, and a pale light spilled out. From within, a voice spoke, deep and steady, carrying the weight of ages. "You have taken my oath," the voice said, "and with it, my enemies have become yours." Eric tightened his grip on the blade, staring at the faint outline of a figure inside the coffin. It was armored in gold, its features hidden beneath a helm shaped like the wings of a hawk. "You are the first to reach me since the war began," the voice continued. "The blade chose you, and now you must choose its fate." Eric stepped closer. "How do I end the war?" he asked. The figure inside slowly rose, the coffin dissolving into light around it. "There's only one way," the warrior said. "You must carry the oath blade into the heart of the enemy's world and strike their core. But know this, the power of the blade will burn everything in its path, even you." The words hung heavy in the air. The warrior reached out, touching the flat of the blade. The golden light flared brighter than ever before, filling the chamber, with warmth and shadows dancing on the walls. "If you choose to wield its full power, you will destroy them forever," the warrior said. "But you will not return. The choice is yours, bearer of the oath. Eric felt the truth of those words in his bones. It was a path with no return. He thought of the enemies he had fought, the endless hunt that would follow him until either he or they were gone. He thought of the worlds that might fall if he chose to save himself. Then he looked at the sword, its light steady in his hands. Without speaking, he nodded once. The warrior's eyes glowed faintly behind the helm. "Then it is done," the voice said. The chamber shook as the warrior's form faded into the sword, merging with its light. The hum became a deep, resonant tone that filled the air and the ground beneath his feet. Eric felt a surge of strength flow through him, as if the spirit of the fallen warrior now stood at his side. The carvings on the walls blazed with golden light, showing the path that led out of the canyon and toward the enemy's world. When he stepped outside again, the sky was no longer empty. Dark shapes filled the horizon, an army stretching as far as the eye could see. Their armor glowed with red fire, their weapons raised as they marched forward. Eric lifted the oath blade, and its light flared so bright it cut through the clouds. The ground shook as the enemy advanced, their roar filling the air like a storm. Eric took one step forward. The golden light spread from the blade, racing across the ground toward the oncoming army. The roar of the enemy turned to screams as the light consumed them. The power surged higher, brighter, until it filled the world. In that final moment, Eric stood tall, the oath blade raised high, knowing the war would end with this strike, and that his name would be remembered as the one who finished what the fallen warrior began.